We asked what you wanted help with, and an overwhelming number of you responded back and said that you wanted help with shots inside of 50 yards. So there's a tremendous amount of options and variety and ways that you could go about doing that. But Ben, when people come here to B Golf, what do you see most when people struggle with shots inside of 50 yards? Where do they struggle most?
A lot of times it's with controlling the distance, right, which would be contact driven, so a lot of divot work and center face work. And then a lot of other questions we get when people come through the door, how do I control the distance, right? So I think that's the next biggest question that we get is, when I'm inside of 50 yards, how do I control the distance? I want the ball to fly 20 yards. How do I do that, Chad?
Yeah, so we would say that before we get on to the how, most importantly is you have to know what to do. Not how to do, but what to do, and you have to focus your attention there. So what we would say is you're going to need to focus on the size of the swinging motion and the speed of the swinging motion. Some people focus more on the size and it helps them. Other people focus more on the speed and it helps them. So Ben, I'm curious, like when you focus on controlling distance, do you focus more around the size of the motion or the speed, would you say?
I focus a lot on actually the landing spot, so the visual of that, and then making sure that the club swings.
Got it.
Right? But I think a lot of people at home are probably a little bit confused. Like, so when you talk about the swinging motion, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so I would say that you're going to have to get very, very clear on what your intention is. Are you intending on hitting the ball? We see that a lot.
Yeah.
People are around there, they're trying to hit the ball versus focusing their attention on the club and swinging it. Could you give us two different examples of what it would look like to swing the club only and then what it would look like to hit the ball? Yeah,
so when we talk about swinging, right? So swinging is there's weight at the end of the stick, and the weight at the bottom of the stick, it just swings back and forth. So now in a perfect world, what we'd be looking for when you're hitting that chip shot is the ball would just be in the middle of this motion. So now notice it's uninterrupted. And when we talk about more of a hitting motion, a lot of times people think that they physically need to hit something that's on the ground as opposed to just letting the ball actually be in the middle of motion. Or the other thing that we like to see around the green would be people love to try to control it or steer or guide the golf club. So now there's no fluidity to the motion anymore. It looks choppy. It looks like somebody's trying to steer the ball to the destination.
Yeah, so when you're having a struggle inside of 50 yards, if you will, the first thing we do is get people swinging. So we would ask you to just make some contrast. So let's get a ball in the way. And without getting onto the distance too much, just see if you can sense the club. I love that word that you use, fluidity. Can you just get it swinging back and forth with some fluidity or rhythm? All right, so now let's let a ball get in the way of that.
So now my goal with the ball here should be the same as what I just experienced, right?
The fluidity or rhythm. So now most of you are getting caught up in how to do it versus just focusing on what to do. So in this case, Ben is focused on the fluidity of the swinging motion. Very good. So where was your attention?
It's on the fluidity, baby.
Yeah, so that would be the first thing is we got to get you focused on the fluidity, swinging the club, no matter what distance, if it's 30 yards or 20 yards, what have you.
Yeah.
All right, so now you talked about controlling where you're seeing the ball land.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that the ball lands farther than you'd like it to go. Then what would you do?
I can do a couple different things. I can swing it slower or I could swing it shorter.
Cool.
So I've got options.
Or I heard you reference you could just focus on landing the ball shorter because you talked about that.
That's personally what I do. So I like to think of chipping like tossing, right? So if I were going to toss you a ball, I'd look at you and my arm would swing freely. There would be no calculation, how far back, how fast. Right. I wouldn't be thinking about any of that stuff. I'd look at you and my arm would swing freely and then I can get my ball to go to the destination. So that's how I chip too.
Right.
It's good fun.
Right. All right. So that one landed out there. So show us something that doesn't go as far. Maybe it lands on this towel.
So now, similar thing with this towel on the ground, right? I'm going to look at the towel because what we notice most of you do when you're out there, you just look at the pin the whole time.
Right?
Oftentimes there's no planning, right? So we want to plan where we're going to land it and then how's it going to roll to the hole, right? So when I'm hitting this chip shot, I'm trying to land it on the towel. I'm not going to look at the hole. I'm going to look at the towel.
Right. So it's a process. We're going to go from point A, land it at point B, so it then rolls to point C. A lot of the times people are just focused on going to point C. Very good. So what I observed was a smaller, slower version of that swinging motion. The ball didn't fly too far, yes?
Very true.
Very good. So this winter, we can't encourage you enough. Focus on these little shots because it'll, one, help your understanding of what to do with the golf ball, and two, it'll really start to bring those scores down so you can take advantage of this winter at home in the basement or at the range or even come in here. So we hope this helps you. Start with the swinging motion, play with the size of the speed, and let us know if you have any more questions.